So it looks like Marvel Studios has changed their plans for Avengers 5. Recently, Deadline reported that the next Avengers movie may feature more than 60 characters returning to the MCU, and it's already set to be one of the biggest productions ever from Marvel Studios. And side note, if you didn't happen to hear, Sean Levy, the director of Deadpool and Wolverine, Free Guy, The Atom Project, and more awesome movies, is the top choice from Marvel to direct the film, according to Deadline. But this new report that came out a couple of days ago tells us that Marvel Studios has moved away from their original plans for Avengers 5, which of course was originally Avengers Kang Dynasty. And I think I might know what their new plan is, including how they plan to reboot the MCU after Avengers Secret Wars, because we've heard that's going to happen. After Secret Wars, we get a reboot of the MCU. And the question is, how? Well, I believe both actually have to do with the title and the plot for Avengers 5, and of course the plot for Avengers Secret Wars, and all of the movies in between as well. Because don't forget, there are going to be at least a couple of movies in between the two Avengers films. So let's talk about the possible new title and plot for Avengers 5 and how it goes into Avengers Secret Wars and then the soft reboot. Heading back to 2023, it was discovered that Marvel Studios had recently copyrighted a bunch of names. Avengers Kang Dynasty and Avengers Secret Wars were two of them that were copyrighted. Marvel Studios would go on at San Diego Comic-Con to announce these titles, and that was basically the same day that these copyrights were discovered. But these weren't the only titles that were copyrighted. Another title that you might have heard before was Avengers Eternity War. And here's the kicker about that. They have let go of some other copyrights. They've let them expire, except they have renewed Avengers Eternity War. And I think the plot of Eternity War makes perfect sense for the MCU right now and will lead us directly into Avengers Secret Wars and the reboot. And I think that it could be the new title for Avengers 5 if they are trying to indeed move away from Kang the Conqueror, in which outlets and trades have reported before. In fact, that's why we call it Avengers 5 to this day, because an outlet reported that it was no longer going to be called Avengers Kang Dynasty. And now we hear that they have really changed what Avengers 5 is going to be about, so it leads us to believe that the title is going to be changed as well. And since they already have Eternity Wars copyrighted, it makes sense that this would be the new title, but the story behind it is actually really exciting. And yes, it does have to do with the actual cosmic entity Eternity as well, and still ties into the multiverse. So in the beginning of the Marvel universe in the comics, there was only one universe. It was called the First Firmament. And in the First Firmament, you had the Aspirants and the Celestials, who would end up going to war with each other. And this war shattered the universe into a bunch of different pieces. And from these pieces, countless universes were formed. The multiverse was formed, and it was called the Second Cosmos and the First Multiverse. This is a story that I can definitely see them getting into in Avengers 5 and Avengers Secret Wars when the whole entire threat of the multiverse being destroyed comes into play. Much like we had Wong and Doctor Strange explain the origin of the Infinity Stones in the beginning of Avengers Infinity War, I believe something very similar will happen in Avengers 5, where they actually explain the birth and origin of the multiverse itself, and this is that origin. Now, of course, they could kind of change it because it's the MCU. They never really adapt everything 100% from the comics, but this is the comic origin. Part of it at least. There's more. So with the Second Cosmos, the multiverse was born. Fast forwarding to the Secret Wars events in the comics, they were in the Seventh Cosmos. And this multiverse gets destroyed by the Beyonders and by the Incursions. This results in the death of Eternity. Yes, the Eternity that we saw in Thor, Love and Thunder, which I did think was extremely cool. We finally did see up close and personal a cosmic entity in the MCU, and I hope we're about to see Eternity again, because Eternity is actually kind of two different things. You see, a lot of people do know that Eternity is essentially the universe, the personification of the universe. Each universe in the multiverse has an eternity. However, they are simply a part of a bigger eternity, a multiverse eternity. They are simply cells of this main one. The multiverse eternity is the main one. And I believe that eternity is probably going to die in the MCU, because that is what happens in the comics and leads to the multiverse being destroyed. And clearly we are in the multiverse saga in the MCU. Clearly we know that incursions are happening right now, so we know the multiverse will get destroyed. And if Avengers 5 is going to be called Eternity War, well, this all is kind of starting to line up, especially if they are trying to move away from Kang. And be sure to subscribe to the channel if you love Marvel and want to stay up to date on everything happening in the MCU. Now, we've heard reports that they're not going to completely walk away from Kang, which is great news. I hope they continue to keep his storyline going. In fact, we've heard from some new insiders that Kang is still indeed going to be a villain of Avengers 5, and hopefully for the multiverse saga overall, because they set up his story pretty well. But even if they decide to keep Kang as the main villain, I still believe that this all has to happen. Eternity, like I mentioned, is the multiverse. And if the multiverse is going to be destroyed, eternity will have to be destroyed. And I actually think it could be Kang who does it. Because here's the kicker. If they do indeed want to reboot the MCU, they're going to have to destroy eternity. In Marvel Comics, every single new iteration of the multiverse goes through a destruction and then a new creation of everything. So basically, a multiverse has to die in order to be recreated again. And according to Marvel lore, they start from zero. However, this was changed a little bit in Avengers Secret Wars. As I mentioned, in Avengers Secret Wars, eternity and the multiverse, the seventh cosmos, were destroyed by the incursions and the Beyonders. However, Reed Richards would end up restoring the multiverse, creating the eighth cosmos. However, this new multiverse would be a direct continuation of the previous multiverse and did not have to start from scratch. In fact, most of the universes that were recreated simply continued their stories, continued their existence, almost like nothing really had happened. So a new eternity has to be reborn, because eternity is one, individual universes, and two, the multiverse as a whole. So Eternity War really is a great fitting title for Avengers 5, because it really has everything to do with the multiverse, with incursions, and with the multiverse being destroyed. And clearly Marvel Studios knows this because they copyrighted the name. In fact, when some people first saw this, they kind of thought that maybe Marvel Studios hasn't revealed the last Avengers film in the multiverse saga, thinking that yes, we're going to have Kang Dynasty, then we'll have Secret Wars, but then we'll have Eternity War after, and that is where they deal with the destruction of the multiverse and then ultimately restore it and reboot the new MCU. And I can definitely see how people would think this for sure, but I don't think Marvel Studios is hiding an Avengers movie from us. I think that they were just going back and forth between what they wanted the title of Avengers 5 to be, and when the Jonathan Majors stuff happened, and when they didn't really know what was going to happen with Avengers 5 and King the Conqueror, the character, they decided to renew Avengers Eternity War. So they still have the copyright and trademark for that, which again is why I believe that Avengers 5 could be titled Avengers Eternity War. And I think it makes a lot of sense. They've clearly made a lot of changes to this movie already, and a title change makes a lot of sense as well, especially if you consider that right after Jonathan Majors was found guilty, the trades reported that Marvel Studios is now simply referring to Avengers 5 as Avengers 5. And like I mentioned, this could also result in the reboot. This gives it a perfect way to do this by restoring eternity. Now, I've mentioned several times before that I don't think it's going to be a complete reboot. We've heard it's going to be a soft reboot, but I also don't think they're going to be able to restore the entire multiverse to the exact way it was before, like they do in the comics. This will lead to a new main universe for the MCU that has the Avengers, possibly a new Avengers team, because we've heard that Marvel Studios is planning on bringing back the characters Iron Man, Captain America, and Black Widow with new actors, essentially starting the characters over. And they'll be in a universe with the X-Men and the Fantastic Four and these other heroes like the Inhumans that we really haven't seen in the main universe before. So I think this is actually a great way to go about the multiverse saga. Avengers 5 being the death of eternity, the death of the multiverse, and then after Secret Wars, the rebirth of a new one, which would give us our rebooted MCU. Let me know what you think about this in the comments down below. Is this something you would like to see or not? Let us know. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any of the latest Marvel news and theories. We'll link our other social platforms down below as well as the giveaway details. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.